My fiancé cheated on me with my cousin. My wealthy uncle covered it up, and my parents took their side. So I got my revenge, and now they're begging. I've been putting off writing this for weeks, but I need to get it off my chest. Not sure if this is the right place for it, but whatever. Fair warning, this is going to be long. I'm a 32-year-old guy, and I was engaged to Olivia, 29, for about 8 months. Before that, we had been together for 4 years. To everyone else, we looked like the perfect couple, the ones always posting those picture-perfect, happy moments on Instagram. You know the type. But if I'm being honest, I was the one putting in most of the real effort. I was the one planning date nights, surprising her with little gifts, driving across town to pick up her favorite takeout whenever she had a rough day. I even took on extra freelance work, just so I could afford the kind of engagement ring she had hinted she wanted. But the biggest thing? The Mustang. For our 3-year anniversary, I bought her a 1967 vintage Mustang, a car she had once casually mentioned she thought was cute. I went all in, pouring every spare dollar and free weekend into restoring it perfectly for her. Meanwhile, Olivia was all about appearances. She wanted us to look good together at events, to be seen at high-end restaurants, to have people admire our relationship goals. She would constantly tag me in posts, saying how blessed she was. But the reality? She put in nowhere near the same level of effort. Still, I was so in love that I convinced myself it was normal. Relationships aren't always equal, right? Sometimes one person just loves harder. Then there's my cousin, Derek. He's 31, recently divorced, and the kind of guy who thinks he's irresistible to women. He's always been the charming one in the family, the guy who knows how to work a room, crack the right jokes, and make everyone feel special. And my uncle, his dad, practically funds Derek's entire life. Ever since his divorce, Uncle Keith has been bankrolling him, got him a cushy job at one of his car dealerships, pays his rent, the whole 9 yards. Derek and I weren't super close growing up, but we had some decent memories together. Then Olivia met Derek. It was at a family barbecue 2 years ago, and from the moment they were introduced, something felt off. She laughed a little too hard at his jokes. She always somehow ended up near him at family events. I remember one Christmas party when she disappeared for about 30 minutes. When I finally found her, she was in the kitchen with Derek, standing way too close as he showed her how to make a proper old-fashioned. They had this undeniable chemistry that should have set off alarms. But I ignored it. I chalked it up to Olivia just being her usual social self. God, I was blind. My parents host big family dinners every month. Honestly, they're boring as hell. It's always the same conversations: who got promoted, whose kid made honor roll, blah, blah, blah. But Olivia insisted that we never miss a single one. If I so much as suggested skipping, she'd get weirdly upset. That should have been a red flag. But I'm not exactly Sherlock Holmes. Quick background on my uncle, Keith. He's the unofficial head of our family. He's loaded, owns multiple car dealerships, and has been financially supporting my parents for as long as I can remember. He paid for their house. He covered my college tuition. Because of that, whatever Uncle Keith says might as well be law. I hated that dynamic, but I kept my mouth shut to keep the peace. Anyway, this particular family dinner was at my parents' place. Same dull gathering. Same overhyped pot roast my mom makes every time. We're all seated around the table. Cousins, my sister Emma, and of course Uncle Keith at the head, acting like he's the godfather. About an hour in, I start noticing something. Olivia keeps vanishing from the table. The first time, she claims she needs to take a work call. She's gone for about 15 minutes. Then it happens again, and a third time. At first, I don't think much of it, until I realize her phone is sitting on the table. It hasn't rung once. The fourth time she slips away, I decide to check it out. I wait a few minutes, then go looking for her. First, I check the bathroom, empty. Front porch, no one's there. Then, as I'm walking past my dad's office, I hear whispers. The door is cracked open just enough for me to see inside. And what I saw, it physically made me sick. Olivia was sitting on the desk, and Derek's hands were all over her. The way they were so comfortable with each other. This wasn't some drunken mistake. I knew it wasn't their first time. I shoved the door open so hard it slammed against the wall. They jumped apart like they had been electrocuted. The looks on their faces? First, shock. Then, this pathetic attempt to act innocent. And Derek? He actually had the nerve to say, "It's not what it looks like." Not what it looks like. Are you kidding me? I completely lost it. Grabbing Derek by his shirt, I slammed him against my dad's bookshelf. A bunch of my dad's golf trophies went crashing to the floor. I was seeing red. Not what it looks like. He was making out with my fiancée in my parents' house, and it's not what it looks like. Olivia burst into tears, saying she was sorry that it just happened, spouting the same tired excuses cheaters always use in movies. I couldn't even look at her. I kept my focus on Derek. We grew up together. We spent summers fishing. He was at my college graduation. And now, here he was, stabbing me in the back in the worst way imaginable. That's when the rest of the family came rushing in. My parents, Uncle Keith, my sister Emma, everyone. My mom gasped at the broken trophies scattered on the floor. My dad looked completely lost. And then, of course, Uncle Keith took control. He literally pulled me off Derek, treating me like some out-of-control teenager. "What the hell is going on here?" he demanded. I was so angry I could barely form words. I turned to Derek. "Tell them," I said, my voice shaking. "Tell them what you were doing with Olivia." Derek just stammered. Olivia, now full-on sobbing in the corner, had mascara running down her face. Uncle Keith stepped between us like he was shielding Derek. "That's enough," he said firmly. "Whatever this is, we're not dealing with it at a family dinner." I looked around the room. Everyone was staring at me. So I laid it all out. "I just caught Olivia and Derek making out in here. They've been sneaking around behind my back." The entire room fell silent. Then, my mom muttered, "They probably just had too much to drink." My dad hesitated. Maybe you misinterpreted what you saw." "Misinterpreted? Are you kidding me?" That's when I knew I wasn't going to get any support from them. Uncle Keith was already working on damage control, and my parents, they'd follow his lead, just like they always did. So I grabbed my keys and walked out. No goodbye. No taking Olivia with me. Let her figure out how to get home. I didn't know if Derek drove her, or if she found another way. And honestly, I didn't care. I drove for hours, eventually ending up at some random coffee shop downtown where no one knew me. By the time I checked my phone, I had 32 messages from Olivia. The usual cheater script. "I'm so sorry. It was a mistake. Please come home so we can talk." Talk about what, exactly? How long she had been cheating? How many times? If it was just Derek? Or if there were others? I crashed at my buddy Mike's place that night. I couldn't face going back to our apartment. Not after this. The next morning, I woke up feeling like absolute garbage. Partly from the hangover. Partly from, having my entire life implode. Mike's a good guy. Didn't push me for details. Just handed me a cup of coffee and said I could stay as long as I needed. By morning, my phone had over 50 notifications. Mostly Olivia. But also my mom, dad, and, of course, Uncle Keith. I ignored every single one and took the longest shower of my life, hoping somehow the hot water would erase the mental image of Olivia and Derek together. When I got out, my phone was ringing again. It was my sister, Emma. She's 3 years younger than me, but way sharper than the rest of our family. She's the only one who actually calls out the family's nonsense. I answered, and before I could say anything, she went, "Holy crap, are you okay? Mom called me crying last night, but wouldn't tell me why." I had to get the story from Cousin Jen. She paused. "Is it true about Olivia and Derek?" I told her everything. And for the first time, it felt good to talk to someone who wasn't making excuses for them. Emma listened. Then she just said, "What a couple of idiots. I'm so sorry, bro." Simple as that. Around noon, my mom called. She immediately launched into, "You need to talk to Olivia, sweetie. She's absolutely devastated. Everyone makes mistakes." I snapped. Mom, taking the wrong exit on the highway is a mistake. Making out with your fiancé's cousin at a family dinner? That's a choice. She went silent for a moment. Then she sighed. I know you're hurt, but family is family. We have to figure out how to move forward, together. Translation. Uncle Keith doesn't want drama messing up his perfect little family hierarchy. And speak of the devil. My phone rang again the second I hung up with Mom. Uncle Keith. Now, here's the thing about Keith. You don't ignore him in our family. He's 6 feet 2 inches, ex-military and filthy rich from his car dealerships. He controls the family's finances, paid for my college, got me my first job, everything. My parents basically depend on him. So even though I was furious, I answered. You made quite a scene last night, he said, skipping a greeting entirely. I caught my fiancée cheating on me with Derek, I snapped. What did you expect? Keith sighed like we were talking about a fender bender. Look, these things happen, he said. Derek's had a rough time since the divorce. He made a mistake. Olivia made a mistake. But you, causing a scene like that at your parents' house, that was uncalled for. I could not believe what I was hearing. Uncalled for? Are you serious right now? Keith's voice hardened. I am, and I think you need to calm down and handle this like an adult. Derek already apologized. To you, I interrupted. Why the hell is he apologizing to you? Keith's tone turned stern, the one he uses when he's asserting dominance. Because I'm the one who had to calm your parents down after your outburst. Listen, son, everyone makes mistakes. You need to decide if you can forgive Olivia and move forward. That was the moment something snapped in me. I had spent my entire life tiptoeing around Keith, grateful for his generosity, letting him run the family, and now he was trying to dictate how I should respond to being betrayed. I hung up on him, mid-sentence. No one in our family had ever hung up on Keith before. Then I shut off my phone and went for a long drive just to clear my head. When I got back to Mike's, I powered my phone back on. Missed calls from everyone in my family, except Emma, and about 20 more pathetic messages from Olivia. I had just made myself a sandwich when there was a knock at the door. Mike answered it, then came back with an awkward look on his face. Your parents are here. Great. Just what I needed. They stood in Mike's living room, completely out of place. My mom's eyes were red and puffy, and my dad wore that strained expression he always got when he was uncomfortable. I didn't offer them a seat. I just stood there, arms crossed, waiting for whatever speech they had rehearsed. My dad cleared his throat. Son, we're worried about you. I let out a short laugh. Worried about me? What about worrying about the fact that Olivia and Derek betrayed me? My mom dabbed at her eyes. We're not saying what they did was right, she said gently. But people make mistakes and families forgive each other. This isn't some small mistake, I shot back. She was going to marry me. We were planning an entire life together. My dad shifted uncomfortably. Keith thinks... I don't care what Keith thinks, I snapped. My parents exchanged a look. That look told me everything. Keith had always been the one calling the shots in our family. My dad exhaled slowly. Keith has done a lot for this family, he said carefully. He helped us buy our house. He got Derek a job after the divorce. He paid for your college, for God's sake. And there it was. The real reason they were here. Keith was angry that I had disrespected him, and they were here to fix it. So because Uncle Keith hands out money, I'm just supposed to pretend it's fine that my fiancé cheated on me with my cousin. No, but... My mom started. But nothing, I interrupted. You're not here because you care about me. You're here because Keith told you to smooth things over. My dad's face hardened. That's not fair, he argued. We care about everyone in this family. Just not as much as you care about keeping Keith happy. My mom started crying again. And yeah, that made me feel awful. I mean, I got it. They depended on Keith. After the 2008 recession, he bailed them out. And ever since then, they had been under his thumb. I sighed, my voice calmer now. Look, I understand you guys are in a tough spot, but I'm not going to pretend everything's fine when it's not. I can't be around Olivia or Derek. Maybe ever. And I'm definitely not going to apologize to Keith for hanging up on him. My dad sighed. Keith's hosting a family dinner next Sunday, he said. He expects everyone to be there, including you. I laughed. Not happening. Please, my mom pleaded. Just come to dinner. Hear Keith out. That's all we're asking. I'll think about it, I lied, just to get them to leave. There was no way in hell I was going to sit through a dinner with Olivia and Derek while Keith lectured everyone about family unity. I stayed at Mike's for a few more days, then found a short-term rental I could afford without dipping into the wedding savings. The irony of using my honeymoon fund to pay for a security deposit on a tiny studio apartment wasn't lost on me. A few days later, I finally went back to our old place to grab my things, making sure Olivia was at work. Honestly, I half expected her to have changed the locks, but she hadn't. Everything looked exactly the same, except she had flipped all our engagement photos face down. Real mature. I packed up my clothes, my PlayStation, and a few essentials. I left the furniture and kitchenware behind. I could buy new plates, but I couldn't stomach the thought of sitting on the same couch we had spent so many nights together, now tainted by the realization that she had been lying to me the whole time. As I loaded the last box into my car, my neighbor from across the hall stopped me. She's this sweet older Indian lady who always brought us homemade food. Young man, she said, shaking her head, that girl has had many visitors while you were gone. Men visitors, late at night. Great. So not only had Olivia cheated with Derek, but apparently others too. Or maybe Mrs. Patel was just mistaken. Either way, I didn't want to know. I thanked her and got the hell out of there. That night, I blocked Olivia's number. Not out of spite, but for my own sanity. I couldn't keep seeing her name pop up with another excuse or apology. It was time to move on. The first week in my new place? Rough. Not going to lie. It's this tiny studio above a Thai restaurant, so it constantly smells like curry. But at least it was mine. No, Olivia. No family drama. Just me, trying to rebuild my life one day at a time. Work was a good distraction. I'm a project manager at a construction company. Nothing glamorous, but it pays decently. Even my boss was more supportive than my own family. Wish they could take notes. About a week after I moved in, Emma texted me, "Hey, want some company?" She showed up with a large pizza, and we ended up talking for hours. She immediately roasted my minimalist apartment, aka my sad little studio above a Thai restaurant. Then we got into the family situation. Emma told me our parents thought I was being difficult, like not wanting to sit around with the people who betrayed me while Uncle Keith preached about forgiveness was somehow unreasonable. What really shocked me was just how deep Keith's influence went. Derek was literally Keith's charity case, which explained why everyone was giving him a pass. When I asked about Olivia, Emma told me she had been at our parents' house, crying and insisting it was a one-time mistake. And Keith? Apparently, he was taking a personal interest in resolving the situation. Emma sighed. "Be careful," she warned. "This isn't just about money. It's about control. If you stand up to Keith, other people might start getting ideas." She leaned back. By refusing to forgive and forget, you're not just standing up for yourself. You're challenging the entire family power structure. She met my eyes. "Stand your ground if that's what you believe in." Then she shrugged. "Just know it won't be easy." She paused. "But for what it's worth, I've got your back." Having Emma in my corner made me feel less alone in all of this. After she left, I checked my phone and saw a voicemail from Olivia. "Hey, it's me. I know you probably hate me right now, and I don't blame you. But please, can we just talk? I never meant to hurt you. Derek and it was stupid. A mistake. I miss you so much. Please call me back. I love you." I deleted it immediately. The next morning, I got a text from my cousin Jen checking in. Even though Keith had told everyone to stay out of it, she still reached out. And yet, even in her kindness, she still acknowledged his authority. When I asked about Derek, she admitted that Keith was secretly furious with him, but was keeping up appearances in public. more worried about protecting his image as the perfect family patriarch than actually caring about my feelings. Classic Keith. Then I got an email, a formal invitation for Sunday dinner, at Keith's house, like it was some royal summons. The email had everything: the time, the dress code, business casual because Keith is nothing if not pretentious, and even the menu. At the bottom, a personal note: your presence is required as we have important family matters to discuss. Required, not requested, like I was some employee being ordered to a meeting. I deleted it without replying. That evening, my dad called. Did you get Keith's invitation? He asked, skipping any greeting. Yeah, I got it, I said. I'm not going. My dad let out a long sigh. Son, you're making this harder than it needs to be. Keith is willing to put this whole unpleasantness behind us. Why can't you do the same? Because it's not Keith's decision to make, I said flatly. He doesn't get to decide when I'm over being betrayed by my fiancé and cousin. And he definitely doesn't get to order me to dinner so I can pretend everything's fine when it isn't. This isn't just about you, my dad said. This is affecting the whole family. Your mother barely sleeps. Emma's being difficult too. Even Jen's asking questions. So what? I cut in. Everyone should just fall in line because it's easier? Sorry, not happening. Keith has been very patient. Dad, I interrupted. I'm going to say this one more time. I don't care what Keith wants. I don't care if he's being patient. This is my life, not some TV drama for him to direct. There was a long silence. Then, in a lower voice, my dad said, just think about coming. For your mother's sake, if nothing else. The guilt trip almost worked. Almost. But then I pictured myself sitting across from Olivia and Derek, forced to smile while Keith gave one of his self-righteous speeches about family unity. I knew I couldn't do it. I'll send Mom some flowers, I said, and hung up. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the entire situation in my head. Was I overreacting? Should I just go to dinner, say my piece, and be done with it? But every time I closed my eyes, I saw Olivia and Derek together, and the rage came flooding back. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't wrong to stand my ground. And if Keith and the rest of them couldn't respect that, then maybe they weren't the kind of family I wanted in my life anyway. The next morning, I woke up to 3 missed calls from Uncle Keith. The battle lines had officially been drawn, and Sunday dinner was coming fast. Sunday arrived, and my phone exploded with messages, calls, texts, all about Keith's dinner. I ignored every single one and went for a run. When I got back, someone was pounding on my door like they were trying to break it down. Keith, standing there in his Sunday best, looking furious. Before I could even speak, he shoved past me into my apartment. You missed dinner, he said, his eyes sweeping over my tiny studio with disgust. I didn't miss it, I said. I chose not to go. Keith's jaw tightened. Your behavior is causing problems. Your mother is upset. Your father is stressed, and Derek feels terrible. He should feel terrible, I snapped. He betrayed me. People make mistakes. Stop saying that, I yelled. This wasn't a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to take out the trash. What they did, that was a choice. Things spiraled from there. Keith started listing everything he had ever done for me. College, my first job, all of it. I told him I was done with his conditional generosity. Then he dropped the real bomb. Olivia wants to reconcile. That's when I realized he'd been talking to her behind my back. That was the final straw. Get out of my apartment, I said coldly. Keith looked stunned. No one talked to him like that. You're making a serious mistake, he warned as he stepped toward the door. This family has supported you your entire life. I met his gaze. This family has controlled me. There's a difference. And I slammed the door behind him. My heart was pounding. I had just burned a major bridge. But for the first time in years, I felt free. 3 months later, I got a call from my buddy Jack. Dude, he said, you're not gonna believe who just brought in your Mustang for an oil change. The Mustang. I had completely forgotten about it. Let me guess, I said. Olivia? Nope. Some guy named Derek. Said the car belongs to him and his girlfriend now. My blood boiled. Not only was Olivia still with Derek, but they were driving my car. I grabbed the title and headed straight to the garage. Derek was at the counter filling out paperwork when I walked in. He froze. "You've got some nerve," I said. He tried to look tough. "Olivia said you didn't want the car anymore. Did she also tell you that the car is still registered in my name?" Jack, behind the counter, confirmed. They couldn't release the vehicle to anyone but the registered owner. Derek called Keith. Of course he did. But I didn't care. Keith couldn't change the name on the title. I took my car back and drove right past Olivia, who came running across the parking lot. My phone exploded with calls from all of them. I only picked up when Emma called. "Holy crap," she laughed. "You just started World War III. "Not my problem," I said. "The car belongs to me." Emma told me Keith lost it, called an emergency family meeting, yelled at me for being ungrateful, but also ripped into Derek for not keeping it in his pants. Their brilliant solution: I should give the car back as a gesture of goodwill, and Keith would help me buy a new one. I laughed at the insanity of it. Then Keith sent me an official email with the same offer. Return the car and he'd welcome me back to the family. I didn't reply. Keith wasn't used to being ignored, and he definitely wasn't used to being defied. I knew this was just the beginning of his retaliation. Later, my dad showed up looking grim. He told me Keith had threatened to cut them off financially unless I returned the car and dropped the whole affair situation. I refused. I told him I wasn't about to sacrifice my dignity just because they couldn't stand on their own 2 feet. We argued. Then he stormed out. That night, Emma called. Keith had followed through on his threat, completely cutting off my parents. And now, they blamed me entirely. Frantic, they were scrambling to figure out how to cover their mortgage payment. Emma stood by me, even though they had also asked her for financial help. Eventually, my parents showed up at my door unannounced. They looked desperate. Mom had clearly been crying for days, and Dad looked like he hadn't slept in a week. They didn't waste time with small talk. They got straight to the point. They needed $2,300 by Friday, or they'd lose the house. Keith had pulled the plug on this month's mortgage payment, and no one else in the family would dare help them for fear of getting on his bad side. I was their last option. I couldn't believe the audacity. "So let me get this straight," I said. "You're asking me for money after blaming me for ruining your lives." They just stared at me, a mix of desperation and entitlement in their eyes that made my stomach turn. I told them I couldn't bail them out, partly because I didn't have that kind of cash, but mostly because I refused to become their new financial lifeline. "If I do this now," I told them, "you'll just expect me to keep doing it. I'm not going to replace Keith in your lives." They left without another word. Mom was quietly sobbing as they walked back to their car, probably one Keith had paid for. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept imagining them losing their home, all because I had stood my ground against Keith. Around 2 a.m., I caved. I wrote them a check for $1,000. Not enough to fix everything, but enough to help. I included a note. "This is a one-time thing. You need to figure out how to stand on your own." Then, before sunrise, I slipped it under their door. They never mentioned it, never called to say thank you, never asked for more. Somehow that silence cut deeper than all their anger and blame. It's been 8 months since the car incident. A lot has changed. I wish I could say my parents finally realized Keith's money wasn't worth being under his thumb. But that's not how it played out. According to Emma, they downsized to a small apartment, and Dad unretired, now working at a hardware store. Mom? She still won't talk to me. She's convinced I destroyed their comfortable life out of spite. And Keith? True to form, he made an example of them for the rest of the family. "This is what happens when you raise ungrateful children," he reportedly said at a family gathering, one I wasn't invited to. The message was clear. Cross Keith and you'll end up like my parents. Most of the family got the memo and fell in line. Cousins I grew up with, aunts and uncles who used to slip me $20 on my birthday, all gone. too scared of losing Keith's money to even speak to me. Eventually, I realized something. Relationships built on fear and financial dependence weren't real connections anyway. Emma and I, though, we've never been closer. She moved out of our parents' house, got her own place, and refused Keith's financial support. She's struggling a bit, working 2 jobs to cover rent. But she told me over beers last week. It's like I can finally breathe. And I knew exactly what she meant. As for Derek and Olivia, their relationship crashed and burned spectacularly about a month after the car incident. According to Emma, who heard from our cousin Jen, one of the few who still secretly talks to us, they had a huge fight, right in the middle of family dinner. Olivia accused Derek of using her to get to Keith's money. Derek called her a gold digger. They both stormed out. And just like that, they were done. Apparently, losing their transportation, aka my car, exposed all the cracks in their relationship. A few weeks later, Olivia tried to reach out, sent me this long text about how she had made a huge mistake, how Derek had manipulated her, how she had never stopped loving me. I didn't respond. Some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. The Mustang? It's running perfectly now. Took some work. Derek and Olivia clearly hadn't maintained it. But now, it's better than ever. Sometimes I take it on long drives to the coast, windows down, music blasting, and in those moments, with nothing but open road ahead of me, I feel completely at peace. Then, last week, something unexpected happened. I got home from work and saw a familiar figure sitting on the steps of my apartment building. Olivia. She looked awful, hair a mess, wearing sweatpants. Nothing like the polished woman I had once been engaged to. "What are you doing here?" I asked, keys in hand. She stood up, eyes pleading. "I need the diamond bracelet I left at our old place," she said. "My mom gave it to me." I raised an eyebrow. "You mean the bracelet I bought you? The one that cost me 3 months' salary?" Her face flushed. "Look, I know things ended badly," she said, her voice quiet. "But I really need it. Derek and I broke up. I lost my job, and I could sell it to cover rent this month." The audacity was almost impressive. "So let me get this straight," I said. "You cheated on me with my cousin, took my car, and now you want the expensive bracelet I bought you so you can pawn it?" "Please," she whispered. "I have nowhere else to go." "Not my problem," I said, walking past her. "The bracelet's gone anyway. I sold it months ago." She called after me, but I closed the door on whatever sob story she was trying to spin. I had been played enough. 2 days later, my dad called. Apparently, Olivia had gone crying to my parents. "Keith says you need to help her out," my dad started. I laughed into the phone. "Keith is still calling the shots, huh?" "He's family," my dad said defensively, "and he thinks you're being unnecessarily cruel to Olivia." "Of course he does," I replied, "because God forbid anyone in this family actually face the consequences of their actions." Dad hesitated. "Keith wants to meet with you," he said. "Says it's time to put this nonsense behind us." "That's not happening," I said firmly. "I'm done. With Keith's manipulation, with your refusal to stand up to him, and with this entire toxic family dynamic. Tell Keith I wish him well, but I won't be coming." My dad's voice turned cold. "So that's it? After everything?" "Yeah," I said. "That's it." I had made my peace with walking away, and I suggested they do the same. Then I hung up and blocked his number. One by one, I did the same for every family member, except for Emma. When I explained that I needed a clean break, she understood. It's been 2 months since then. Emma keeps me updated, says the family is still in shambles. Keith is livid that his grip on everyone is starting to weaken. Apparently, some of the younger cousins are beginning to question his authority too. My parents, still struggling financially, but they refuse to admit that siding with Keith over supporting me was a mistake. And honestly, that's on them. The thing about cutting toxic people out of your life is that it creates space for better things. I'm seeing someone new. Nothing serious yet, but she's kind and genuine, in a way Olivia never was. I got a promotion at work. The Mustang, running smoother than ever. If there's one thing I've taken from this entire mess, It's that sometimes you have to lose what you thought you wanted to discover what you actually needed. I thought I needed Olivia. I thought I needed my family's approval. Turns out, the only thing I really needed was the courage to stand up for myself. For anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, whether it's a cheating partner, a controlling family member, or just feeling stuck in a situation that's slowly draining you, take it from me. Walking away is hard, but staying in a situation that diminishes you, that's 1,000 times harder in the long run. You deserve better. We all do. Holy crap, didn't expect this to blow up. Thanks for all the awards and supportive comments. For those asking about Emma, she's doing great. Still my only tie to the family, but we keep our conversations about her life, not about family drama. To answer some of the most common questions, no, I never accepted Keith's offer for a new car. The Mustang means more to me than any brand new vehicle ever could. Yes, Olivia has tried to reach out again, this time straight up asking for money. Blocked her new number too. Do I regret cutting ties completely? Not for a second. Some bridges, they need to stay burned.